Should I look at that?
Yeah, or me, either one.
Okay.
All right. Could you tell me your name, please?
Bill Martin.
And what were your years of service and your position at Braniff?
From late 1978 to late 1980. I was a flight engineer, second officer on the 727 only.
All right. What was your first Braniff flight?
Goodness, I don't remember. I was probably so excited.
The 727.
On the 727. I had come out of the Air Force in the fall of '78. Everybody was hiring. I was lucky that Braniff offered me a job first because I had applied to others, and they were all hiring that fall, getting ready for the deregulation. And
Right.
Braniff was hiring, if I remember right, 35 pilots every Monday morning.
Yeah.
Is what I recall. I'm
That
not
would
sure
be
if it was
correct.
that way.
Yeah.
So obviously this was big on my list, and besides Braniff, it's a special looking airline from the outside, and I found out later it's a pretty special airline on the inside also.
Sure, that's
Glad
really
to
great.
be there.
Now, are you from Dallas area? Or
No,
did
I was
you-
actually just got out of the Air Force in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Braniff called me and sent me a letter, and I came over and interviewed.
So you just basically put in your resume, and they.
That's it. Yeah. No.
Oh, they're going to pull you. Military, you were going to get pulled. So.
Yeah, I flew
Yeah.
fighters, and so I didn't have any passenger time. I didn't have any heavy time. That didn't make any difference. Yeah.
Now they can fix all that, and they did.
They did. They did.
So what do you remember most about Braniff? What's something that comes?
I think
to
the
mind?
overall, looking back on it, and I'm not sure I recognized it at the moment, but the fact that I know we went around the world, and that was part of it. I wanted an airline that was growing. Braniff was growing in the fall of '78. American was stagnant. I had an application in American, and I interviewed the first interview over there, and then came back to Braniff for my second interview. Went back to American for my second interview, and Braniff called and said on a Thursday, they said, if you go down to, we'll fly down to Houston Intercontinental, see our doctor, our flight surgeon, and if you pass, start class Monday. And I said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'll be there. And I told American, forget it. I'm not busy. I've got a job. I'm not coming with you. And American was stagnant then, and Braniff was just going and going. And I just thought that's where I want to be.
American was still, Braniff had,
Yeah.
what, 2 years young fleet, and
Right. Everything.
American was still relying on 707, 720s.
Exactly correct. Yes.
With my own
And I don't. The
747.
color had something to do with it too. But
that's
it
going
was
to get
splash. A splash. They called it. Yes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, what do you remember about your training? Was there any specific thing?
Yeah, I obviously had a flight engineer certificate when I got here. I think all of us did. I don't think Braniff hired anyone without him.
Right.
And we were all coming in as flight engineers. And so when I actually finished and got on the line, they must have liked me because they asked me to come teach in what was called BESSIE, Braniff Educational Systems.
Oh yeah, Bessie. That's
So I then, while I'm on probation, I'd been here about 3 months. They said, "Do you want to go teach at our school, flight engineers school?" And I said, "Absolutely."
Oh.
So I taught at BESSIE during my year that I was on probation here. So
right there at the 8001 Lemon
right
Avenue,
over here, I
the
just
Airline
drove by.
Career Academy.
Just
Yeah.
drove by it a minute ago. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So, did you remember any of your instructors or anything like that came to mind?
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but he had been instructing the flight engineer school at BESSIE for years. And as a story I got, one reason they needed instructors is because he had gotten a job as a dispatcher somewhere, so I remember. Okay. They actually came to me and 4 or 5 others, and between I'd say 5 of us, brand new flight engineers, each of us picked a couple of systems, and I taught engines and I forgot hydraulics perhaps, a couple of systems on the airplane, and the 5 of us would alternate coming into the class that day and teaching that particular system in the flight engineer school. So I don't remember the guy, but that's probably the reason. He probably did all of that in the past, but he had graduated and moved on, and so our entire instructor cadre was filled with brand new flight engineers.
Wow.
That had just gone through the school, come back around. Now we're teaching it.
And you know, BESSIE was the longest surviving entity, Braniff entity. It ran until 2009.
I did not know.
I worked for them. I came on board there in 94, 95. I was brought in to overhaul their flight school portion.
Okay.
They were fixing to lose their certificate, and at that time, the FAA was overhauling with a bunch of new, younger guys. Still the old, let's go to lunch, and that's our inspection.
Right.
Wasn't flying, and I had come in and saved qualified training over, and I had a weekend to do it.
Oh my.
So I kind of got around. So people started calling me to do this. I was flying for Martin Air at the time,
Okay.
and thankfully I had a good boss there where I could go and do this stuff in the afternoon. I had an early morning route out to Midland and back, so I had the rest of the day to do this stuff. And so I was there for a year and got them straightened out. But yeah, they continued on to 2009, and the last operation were the simulators still operating at DFW.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was the last thing.
One of the reasons that I thought that interesting since you had taught there, and I don't know what you were paid, but when they came to us, we got paid $10 an hour for an 8-hour day.
More than that, but yeah.
So we got those of us on probation. But as I remember, my pay on probation for the first, I think it was 6 months at Braniff, was $800 a month as a second officer. So
yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. This $10 an hour.
Yeah.
Was so that my family and I could actually buy groceries
and
this
eat.
month. Yeah, it was pretty good. But back
pilots
in
on
those
food
days.
stamps. That's great. I love that. So I know you were on there 2 years, but were there any members of management or other colleagues that you remember or admired?
Well, Captain States, because I believe he was, I don't know, the official title was probably VP Flight Ops or whatever they called it. Yeah. I just remember him. Fortunately, I didn't have to do any rug dances in front of his office or in front of his desk, as we call it. Right. So I didn't have any personal.
You were a good guy.
Yeah,
that's I was just keep clean on that
I was
one.
just number. I think I was thinking earlier today. I think I was number 1,625 thereabouts.
Oh gosh.
But there was only 2,200 pilots.
Yeah.
But we'd hired so many. I got hired early in October of '78, and we hired every month. We hired so many people that I had about 25% of the company below me within 2 months.
Quick. Yeah.
And I said, well, in this airline business, I've got it's golden.
I mean, that could have been years before you got to that point.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. And you said you flew on Braniff's first 747-601?
Yes, I did not actually pilot that airplane until later in my career with other airline. I actually flew for UPS after I got furloughed at Braniff. My next job was flying the 747 at UPS.
Okay. So I wonder if you were ever in the simulators, because after. Well, no, that would have been too late.
Well, that would have been. It was in '80. No, we did. UPS brought us here.
Oh.
And put us through the 747.
Okay.
We had to get. I was a bona fide flight engineer, but we weren't. No one was checked out, including the pilots. We weren't checked out on the 747.
Right.
In the summer of '84, American had 4. I think it was. No, well, however, they had a handful, 6, 7, 4, 100 freighters.
Yeah.
And they said, we're getting out of the freight business. UPS walked in with a bag full of cash and bought them.
Yeah.
The way UPS works.
Oh, yeah.
And they took, it was 6 airframes. This is crazy. They took 10 crews, 10 captains, 10 FOs, and 10 FEs. I was one of the 10 flight engineers, and they picked me up because they said, oh, you're a real flight engineer. A lot of guys were coming in off the street with nothing but the ticket. Mm-hmm. And they said, you're a real flight engineer on a Boeing? I said, yes, sir, 2 years. And they said, we'll hire you to put you on our 747. Mm-hmm. So I flew that for a few months before they ended up leaving there and going to Southwest Airlines later. So I flew on the big one. I took Big Orange to Hawaii, I think, twice before I
that's cool.
Before I lost privileges and whatever.
To do that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I assume. So what was your favorite Braniff airplane?
Well, probably 7.2. I mean,
727,
just because that's the only one that they let me touch.
Yeah. So one of the things that we know that you did is you generously helped us at the Braniff conference back in September.
My pleasure.
And it was that you flew the Dallas Cowboys team around.
Did.
So that leads us to our next question. Did you assist any celebrities? So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did? How did you get into that, flying them? How did you get into that?
I flew with Wally Nicholson, who was the captain on the 7.2, who flew the Cowboys for many years. I don't know, 10 or 15 years before that. He's been doing it. Braniff had a contract with the Cowboys that was a by-name request. And I still have the letter at home that it's on the Dallas Cowboy Football Club letterhead, and it says, here's our, we want to fly these dates and these times, and these are the crews that we want to be on the airplane. It was Wally Nicholson, it was the first officer was Tim Gleason, and then it was me. I met Wally earlier in the year, in March or April. I had flown as his flight engineer on a regular line trip, and we got along well, and of course, he told me about the Cowboys, and I was just in awe that somebody could do that. And he said, well, about 2 months later, probably in April or May, he was standing in the jetway when I got off one of my trips. He had figured out where I was flying. He's standing there and says, Bill, do you want to fly the Cowboys with me? And of course, my jaw dropped, and of course I did. And from then on, we flew them. Every time they left town in the fall of '79, we took them, the three of us that I just mentioned, and they had a regiment of, there was probably 6 or 7 flight attendants, generally only 4 or 5 went, and they made that work. Okay. But Braniff, I would fly a regular line, bid a regular line, and Braniff would then, anything that got in the way of the Cowboy trip, they pulled with pay. And of course, I got paid for the Cowboy trip. Anyway, it ended up being a good deal for a poor kid on probation. But so that's how I got the job. Wally asked me, and he was a great guy. And unfortunately, recently passed. But
I thought he
did that for many years. But I can tell you a little bit about a day in the life, if that's what you want.
Absolutely, okay. Please do. Yeah, that's my next question.
Okay, well, obviously the games are always played. There's Monday nights and Sunday night games, but let's say the typical game is played on Sunday afternoon. We would take the team. We always had an airplane just for us. It was obviously a charter. Wally's position was the Cowboys owned every single seat on that airplane, including the jump seat. Mm-hmm. So we never had jump seaters, even though at one occasion I remember getting a call from San Francisco Ops while we are in San Francisco at the end of the game saying, we got one of our captains needs to go back to Dallas. Can he ride the jump seat? And Wally said no. He says the Cowboys own the jump seat. They've told us they do not want strangers. They don't want looky-loos. They don't want, whatever. He says they own every seat. And so I'm sorry, I just can't take the guy with us. But they were very particular about that. But we would go out the airplane and they would show up, let's say, depending on if we're going to the East Coast or to the West Coast, we always tried to arrive 4 or 5 in the afternoon, just before dinner. And so they would come out to the airplane, and the bus would pull up, and they would load, cargo load all their gear. I mean, a great big moving van with all the gear.
And this was at the hangar, the Braniff Operations Maintenance Base.
No, it was most of the time it was at the gate at the terminal
at Love Field.
At
DFW.
At DFW,
yeah, 78.
79.
Yeah, right.
At DFW, and the trucks would come up, and the Greyhound bus. The players would all park over at the practice field and put them on a Greyhound bus or 2 and bring them over, come up to the drop down tail on the 727, and they all come up the stairs. Now occasionally, I don't know why or what they would come through the terminal, but anytime, Tom Landry's ran a pretty tight ship, and anytime one of their players was in the public view, he had on a coat and tie. That was really interesting to me. And on a side note, talking to we had another crew who flew the Houston Oilers under Bum Phillips, and we used to razz them because their guys showed up in flip-flops and T-shirts, and Tom Landry says no. So if you're getting on or off the airplane at a terminal, about half the time was down into a bus, and other time was into a terminal into a bus, then your tie was on and you looked good, and that's just the way he ran the team. It was pretty cool. So anyway, we would get to the hotel at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, depending on which way we went, and they would take the players out, let them get a quick run around the field in case some of them had never been in that particular stadium. They don't want them to be shocked, whatever. And then they would let them go for a few hours, and then they had a bed check, I think around 10 p.m. All the players had to be in their hotel rooms. They two to a room, and I don't know if somebody would go by bed check. I don't know.
That's interesting, yeah.
But
curfew.
An interesting thing about the Cowboys, and we were called America's team. I guess we still are, but Tex Schramm, who's the general manager, really liked the reporters and the TV people and the radio people and wanted to keep them happy. So the Cowboys always had a suite upstairs that had free liquor, free food, free TV. Didn't have the internet yet, and it was open to all the sports writers. And then just before that, he would take them all to dinner, and he would invite the crew. We would go to dinner with Tex Schramm, and none of the players. We never saw a player. They didn't do any of this with players. But so we would do that on Saturday night, and then Sunday morning we would get up to actually have a church service for, I don't know if it was Catholic and Protestant or Jewish, I don't recall. I went to the Protestant one, but they would have a quick church service in the morning about 8 o'clock for a few minutes if they wanted to go. And then they would feed them a big breakfast, let's say 10 o'clock. And then they'd put them on a bus and take them to the stadium for, let's say, a 3 o'clock game. Well, think about this. They ate breakfast at 10 o'clock. They don't. That food has to settle for 2 or 3 hours so they don't get cramps. Then they play a 3-hour game.
At least.
Then they put them on a bus after they shower, and they put them on a bus back to the airplane. And they haven't eaten for like 8 hours. They are ravished.
I can imagine.
Okay. So during the game, the 3 pilots of us, Wally and Tim and I, are sitting up in the radio booth with Brad Sham and Vern Lundquist, who were the voice of the Cowboys on KRLD here in Dallas for forever. And the interesting thing was we 3 are in uniform because we're going from the game right to the airplane, obviously. And we're standing behind them. And Wally's job was to see who got the ball. And they had little, the fields down there, they could watch them and they see who, in the big tussle, who's got the ball. Wally's job was to find out who got the ball and tell Tim, the co-pilot, who's standing next to him, who it is. He would say Tony Dorsett. Tim's job was to see how many yards Tony Dorsett ran. And he would whisper to me, Dorsett for 8 yards. And my job on the side wall of this little booth. The little booth wasn't maybe 4 times as big as this little couch here. It wasn't very big with glass right here. And I had a grease board over there with Dorsett's name on it and all the players. And I would be changing and said, okay, Dorsett just ran, 8. Dorsett for 8 more yards and added it to the 32 that he had. So I'm writing up there as either Brad or Vern is looking up as I'm writing and going, wow, that was Dorsett. He just ran 8 yards on that one for 40 yards. So, these guys...
We were doing the feed.
we were doing that, and it was so much fun. And so we spent the whole game up there. That's great. Then at the end of the third quarter, the flight attendants went to the airplane. Ground maintenance had power on it. They went in there. I told you how hungry these guys were. As they come off the bus and come up the tail of the 7-2, there's a couple of coolers there full of Cokes and beer and water and so on to drink. Yeah. And as they each got to their seat, and everybody had their own seat. It was a pecking order,
Yeah.
The rookies sat where there was an empty seat. The guys had been there last year. They still sitting in the same. That's my seat. And they knew that.
Right.
But on that seat was a sub sandwich about that big around with about a pound of meat in it, about that long. It was just sitting there as an appetizer to get them until we got up, and the girls would then feed them a real meal, like well, probably better than we get on airplanes.
Yeah,
maybe
probably.
back in the day, but and then we would fly them home, often arriving back in Dallas at 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 o'clock at night, depending on which way we went. And there would always be, excuse me, there was always somebody in the terminal waiting to see them. I don't mean family and friends. I mean fans. And that's, again, even after the game and flying, Landry had them tie their ties and get off the airplane and look great. So, and we did that 8 away games and 2 preseason games. So we would go out, get them, do them, we stayed with them. The airplane stayed with them overnight wherever we went. And so the next day we brought them home. So
What year was this that you?
Fall of '89.
Oh, fall of '89.
Fall of '89.
Oh, okay. So this was with Braniff 2?
No. Original.
79. Fall of 79.
Oh, did I say 89?
You said 89.
I'm sorry.
I was like, whoop, okay.
No, I'm sorry. All of that was in 79.
1979.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, excuse me. So
So-
that was really.
So did they rotate you off of that, or did you?
I got furloughed.
Oh, so the furlough cut it.
The furlough cut in. I was furloughed 1st September of '80.
Okay.
So I think Wally did it one more year, and then and part of the bankruptcy stuff, I think Delta took them, or anyway, the
American,
whoever the contract
and
went away.
they have them now. Yeah.
Excuse me. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
And that was it. That was I couldn't have asked for any more exciting, except maybe to fly the Concorde. But
well, there you go. There
But
you go.
no.
Well, so when you were furloughed, did you have any idea that was coming, or did it just all of a sudden happen?
No, I had some idea it might happen. The first ones were furloughed. I went out, I think, September 1st. I believe the first furlough was probably in July or maybe August of
That sounds
80.
Right.
And I
It was
saw
the
first.
fall.
First, a couple of them, a couple of hundred went. I had 600 below me. I said, not going to happen to
Not
me.
going to happen. Yeah, it was that summer of '80 that things didn't go as they should have.
Exactly.
The traffic just never materialized, and the fuel prices kept going up.
Yeah, going
That's
up.
what
It was
nailed it.
crazy. Yeah. So no, but I do remember thinking it would be back. In fact,
Yeah.
I was in the National Guard unit with another one of our Braniff guys, and when Braniff went, he got furloughed after I did. Excuse me, and we talked about it, and he got, I think Northwest came down, excuse me, and offered everybody at Braniff offered them a job or offered them an interview at Northwest because they were trying to build up.
Right.
And Jeff went up there to interview, and he called me. He says, "Bill, Northwest is doing this," and then later he got a job offer actually at Southwest, and he said, "Southwest offered me a job, and they want me to resign my Braniff number." I said, "Are you crazy? Braniff's coming back. Are you crazy?"
Right. Well, and they did.
Yeah, they did. So,
years,
and in fact, after I had gotten out, and I ended up at Southwest also. A couple 3 years later, I got a note from Braniff saying, "You want to come back?" And by that time, I was already picked up and settled in Dallas. And I said, "No, I'll pass."
Well, that was the better thing.
Yeah, you never know. We say in this business, you never know if
Look at Southwest now.
if you made a good job. I made a good choice. Did I make a good choice taking Braniff versus waiting a week and maybe getting on with American? I would have been furloughed at American too. Who knows?
Oh, yeah,
But you
sure.
never know until the day you die, basically, because you don't even know if your pension's going to be there. You can
True.
ask all the major carriers the pensions.
All of them. Yeah, it wasn't just Braniff. They were all used
They
that
all
cash
went,
to keep
it was
operating.
awful, so.
Yeah.
But it was a great job. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So
Well, so you weren't there on May 12th of 1982.
I was not. No.
But what were you doing that day? What did you
I
think
had
about that?
a friend of mine and I got into the roofing business.
Okay.
So I decided, well, I've got to eat. And he said, I need some help. And he had a little roofing business. And I was actually a roofing contractor when I remember I was in Fort Worth and it hit the news. May 12th, wasn't it?
May 12th and
12th.
13th, yeah.
Yeah.
12th was shut down, 13th was the filing.
And it was like, oh my gosh, you know, I really I had not expected. I expected to always go back.
Yeah.
Always go back.
Yeah. It was unfortunate that they didn't just refly, but Continental was the one that benefited from that, you know, and they survived.
Yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans. We heard lots of stories about an American, you know, hurting us badly.
I think those that was proven to be true. They settled with Braniff many years later.
Oh, they did?
People
I
did
didn't
not
know that.
know.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
I'll tell you one thing I recall. I was standing in line, still flying. I was standing in line at the ticket counter to get. We'd already started backing up and letting people go.
Mm-hmm.
Did not look good. Handwriting was on the wall, and I was standing in line behind a passenger at the ticket counter. He was trying to do something, and I'm just standing there waiting to get my deadhead pass to go somewhere. And the Braniff employee starts screaming at the customer right in front of me, and I'm going, "Oh, this is not good."
That's not good.
And I said, "This is." If that's the attitude, and I'm not picking on that one particular person, who knows? I mean,
what was going on
in their life?
But still yelling
they
at the
could have
passenger.
had a furlough message, you know. Yeah, this is your last day at work.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were not happy, and then the morale kind of went down when that started happening.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for sure. So, do you have anything else you'd like to share about Braniff?
It was a joy. And I would have gone back in a heartbeat. One of the reasons I chose Braniff, besides being the first, although it didn't have to be, because literally I had a mother-in-law who was a good friend of Bob Six's personal assistant, which means Bob Six was a chairman of Continental, and I could have had a job at Continental just like that, you know.
Yeah.
And so I had choices only because it was that time of the hiring cycle. You know, you could be an astronaut and not get an airline job if you're at the bottom of the cycle.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? But if you're at the top of the cycle flying Cessna 150s, you could probably get a job. It's just the way.
Yes, I lived through the 1990 mess.
There you go.
Yes,
So,
I was at the very bottom.
yeah, but anyway, it was a wonderful experience. I enjoyed it immensely. I look back very fondly with Braniff. It was a magnificent airline.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Bill, we want to thank you for dropping by again today, and
My pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you very much.